I chose the best friend's brother. That Friday night, rain drummed against the roof of the cabin as I tipped my wine glass, trying not to stare at the man across from me. The man I had spent most of my life thinking of as completely off limits. Marcus, my best friend Olivia's older brother, twice my age, freshly divorced, with a quiet presence that filled every corner of the room like a tide creeping in. My heart kept beating too fast, as though my body knew something I refused to admit. We were alone here for the weekend, and something had shifted between us. For years, my life had been a kind of careful theater, married for security, not passion, working in a steady but uninspired career, filling my time with book clubs and charity events. I cherished the stability, the familiar rhythm of Sunday dinners with friends, the knowledge that nothing unpredictable would throw me off course. Olivia had been my anchor since college, the person I could laugh with, lean on, trust completely. Her family had always felt like mine, and Marcus, though distant, was a fixture in my mental landscape. I knew his face in photographs, his voice in brief hellos, the strong lines of his jaw when he smiled politely. He was never mine to wonder about. Not until now. The truth? My marriage had been crumbling for months before it finally broke. I came home one afternoon in late autumn to find a suitcase missing from the closet and a note resting on my desk. I cannot do this anymore. The words felt both too simple and too heavy, my eyes catching on the slanted cruelty of the handwriting. I stood in that silent room, listening to the radiator hiss, tasting the bitter metal of tears at the back of my mouth. The world seemed to shrink. Every sound echoed off the walls, as though mocking the hollowness inside me. Nights became long corridors of grief, my footsteps clicking against hardwood that felt too wide for one person. Sometimes I would sit in the kitchen, staring at the dark window, the faint hum of the refrigerator keeping me company. And then Olivia invited me up to the cabin, just to reset, she'd said, promising good coffee and fresh air. She had to leave for an emergency work meeting the next morning, leaving me with her brother. Marcus arrived carrying firewood. His dark sweater smelling faintly of cedar and something warmer, an earthy cologne I could not name. He spoke little at first, but every time those calm brown eyes flicked toward me, some undercurrent pulled at my ribs. That evening we made dinner together, chopping vegetables side by side, his sleeve brushing mine once, then again. The air inside the cabin felt charged. My pulse kept skipping as though unwilling to settle. Watching the fire's glow paint his profile gold, I began to notice the strength in his hands, the quiet way he listened. I told myself it was harmless, these small glances, these moments where our laughter overlapped in the soft light. But when he reached for the wine bottle and his fingers grazed my wrist, the spark shot through me, both terrifying and thrilling. Sleep was useless that night. I lay in the guest room, listening to the steady sigh of wind through the trees, remembering the way his gaze lingered for half a second too long. In the morning, coffee steam rose in the cool light as he stood at the kitchen counter, asking about my work, my plans, my writing. With each word, I felt pieces of myself unclench, parts that had been frozen since my husband left. Marcus made no grand gestures, just steady, quiet presence and the occasional flicker of warmth that made my breath catch. If this confession has you holding your breath the way I did that weekend, hit like and share right now, because you will not believe what happened next. On the second evening, after a day of hiking along the ridge, the clouds broke and the sunset spilled across the treetops like molten copper. We sat on the porch, knees almost touching, talking about things people rarely say out loud, what it feels like, when a marriage dies slowly, how loss sits heavier at night. And how stepping into a new chapter is both freeing and terrifying. He told me his own story, years of compromises, the quiet drift between himself and the woman he once loved, the moment he realized they did not even know how to talk to one another anymore. I watched his hands as he spoke, strong and unflinching, yet betraying faint tremors when he lifted his glass. The porch smelled of pine and faint smoke, and each breath I took felt weighty with unspoken possibility. Inside me, longing was twining around caution, but the longing was winning. Later, as we carried blankets into the living room, lightning flashed distantly and the power flickered out. In the sudden darkness, I heard him breathe in sharply, then say my name like he was testing how it felt in his mouth. My pulse thundered in my ears. His hand brushed mine in the dark, slowly enough that I could have pulled away, but I did not. That touch was not just electric. It felt like the first solid ground I had stood on in months. We stayed like that, unmoving, listening to rain scatter against the windows. I thought about rules, the unspoken ones that say your best friend's brother is off limits, that second chances are a myth, that once you are broken, you do not get to rewrite the ending. But life had already broken those rules for me. Over the next hours, we spoke in low voices, words curling around the sound of the storm, revealing fears I had never allowed out of my chest. He listened, not smiling, not judging, just absorbing, holding space for me in a way no one had done since before my marriage collapsed. When the lights flickered back on, I saw his eyes clearly, and for a moment I almost said it, that I did not want this weekend to end, that I was afraid of what waiting would mean. The next morning, I woke early to find him already outside, splitting wood, the chill air turning his breath into small clouds. Something about the sight solid, capable, entirely present, made my heart ache in a strange, almost sweet way. I realized then that I was not just standing in the aftermath of heartbreak anymore. I was at the edge of something uncharted. Olivia would return in hours, and reality would slip back into place. But in that final moment, as we drank coffee on the porch and sunlight spilled across the table between us, Marcus reached over, his hand covering mine in a gesture that was simple yet full of meaning. Neither of us spoke about what it meant. We just sat there, breathing in the pine scent, listening to the quiet swell of wind across the ridge, letting the possibility hang there between us like an untouched gift. I do not know what happens next, whether it becomes just a memory or the first line of a new chapter. But I know I felt something that reminded me I am still alive, still capable of wanting. And maybe that is enough to start. If you crave more raw, emotional confessions, please like, share, and subscribe. Your next chapter awaits.